Hello, my little mathematicians. Today we're going to do writing and solving inequalities. So let's go ahead and get started. Number one says Allison only has $50 to buy Christmas presents for her sister and her parents. She's already spent $14 for her sister's gift. The amount of money she can spend on gifts is expressed by the following inequality. So we have m plus 14 is less than or equal to 50, where m represents how much money Allison can spend on her parents' gifts. Okay, now most of the time they're not going to give you this inequality, and you're going to have to come up with it yourself. So if you think about it, she has 50, so this is like your total. Okay, she's already spent 14, so what amount plus 14 is going to be equal to 50? However, does she have to spend all of her money? No. But can she spend more than 50? No. So you always do it in reference to your variable right here. So you don't want the greater than sign to be facing your variable because you can't spend more than what you have, but you can spend less than it or you can spend exactly equal to 50. And that's how we set up that inequality. Now let's go ahead and actually solve it. I'm going to get the variable by itself. So just like if this were an equal sign, if this is my variable, how would I get rid of this 14? I would subtract it so that 14 minus 14 cancels and you have m by itself. And just like with an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So then you have 50 minus 14 is 36, and you just bring your inequality down, which means that she has 36 or less left to spend. Okay. The next one says, eat and put some cookie dough in the oven. The baking time must be less than 22 minutes or else the cookies will burn. Okay, so the total is 22 or it can be less than that. Remember, it's always in reference to your variable. The cookies have been in the oven for 7 minutes so far. At what time can she take it out? So it's 7 plus however many minutes left we're going to figure out. Okay, and we want this time to be less than 22. Okay, how do you solve for it? I want to get rid of this plus 7, so the inverse of adding is to subtract so that they cancel and you're just left with your variable. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now 22 minus 7 is 15. Bring down your inequality. So you want to have it in for less than 15 minutes. Otherwise, they will burn. Okay, the next one says, if he is saving up for a new pair of shoes, there are many choices for shoes, and some of them are very expensive. If Mark earns 12 an hour and the cheapest pair of shoes is 48, how many hours may he need to work if he wants to afford a new pair of shoes? The inequality for the story is written below. Okay, so what are you trying to do? You're trying to get shoes for $48. How much does he make? He makes $12 an hour. So you multiply how much he makes times however many hours he works, and that represents how much total he's going to make. Now, you want to do at least $48. So you can have it be equal to 48. We prefer it to be more because, what if tax or you want to get something else or they go up in price. So if he wants to get a pair of shoes, because as we said, the cheapest pair is 48. Hopefully he can get better ones. So this amount needs to be greater than or equal to 48. Now that we set it up, you want to get the variable by itself. 12 and 8 are being multiplied. So the inverse of multiplying is to divide by 12. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to get h by itself. And 12 divided by 12 is 1. And 1 times h is just h. Okay, bring down your inequality. And 48 divided by 12 is 4. So he needs to work at least 4 hours more. He can work equal to 4, but hopefully he works more than that, or else he'll only be able to get the cheapest pair of shoes for 48. Okay, finally, the last one says, the Lions Club is raising money to protect endangered species. Half of the money that is donated to them goes towards paying expenses, while the rest goes directly towards helping the animals. If the Lions Club wants more than 1,000 to help animals, how much money must they raise? Okay, so however much money they get, they only get to actually put half of that towards donations because the other half needs to go to expenses. So the money donated divided by 2 is equal to how much they actually get to put towards the animals. They want to put 1,000 towards it. So then this amount right here, you'd prefer it to be greater than this. Remember, you always want your sign to be facing towards your variable. And there you go. How do you get m by itself? Well, m is being divided by 2, and the inverse of dividing is to multiply. So that those cross cancel and become 1, because 2 divided by 2 is 1 on both of those. And then you have 1 times m is just m. Bring down your inequality, and whatever we did to one side, we want to do to the other. Since we multiplied that side by 2, multiply this side by 2, and 2 times 1,000 is 2,000. So if they want to put 1,000 to helping the animals, that means they need to collect at least, like more than 2,000, because they can only get to keep half of the money that they get, because the rest of the half goes to expenses. All right, now that you got some practice setting up word problems and solving them, let's just do some basics. Okay, on the next page over here, again, how do you get a variable by itself? Do the inverse. So we're going to do the inverse of subtracting 9 is to add 9. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Those cancel out, and then you have x is less than or equal to 29. Okay, I want you to try to actually graph these. So put the number you're focusing on in the middle, one bigger and one smaller, and then think if it's open or shaded in and which direction it goes. Okay, go ahead and try all of these and then unpause the video and come back and check. Okay, hopefully you did this one was shaded in, because if there's a line underneath, that means it's filled in. And then you can think of this as like your arrowhead. If the variable's on the left, okay, that's like your arrowhead, so it's facing to the left. Or the less than sign is facing your variable. Where do numbers get smaller? To the left. Okay, here, to get the variable by itself, you would subtract 8.5 from both sides. Those cancel, because 8.5 minus 8.5 is 0. So you just have y is greater than or equal to, well, 10 minus 8.5 is 1.5. And then you're going to go ahead and graph that. 1.5 is between the whole numbers of 1 and 2. And is it an open or closed circle? It's closed, shaded in, because it's including that point. It's equal to it. And it's to the right, because the great big open end is facing your variable. So it's the numbers that are bigger going this way. Or since the variable's on the left, it's like your arrowhead facing that way. Over here, what do I do to get my variable by itself? Well, they're being multiplied, and the inverse of multiplying is to divide. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Now those cancel. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 1 times n is n. Bring down your inequality. 42 divided by 6 is 7. And if I were to graph this, 7 in the middle, is it open or closed? It's open, because it's not including that point. There's no line underneath. And my arrow should be going to the right, because a great big open end is facing my variable. It's the greater than. Or since my variable's on my left, you can use that as like your arrowhead. Okay, finally, last one. How do I get my variable by itself? I multiply by 4. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. I multiplied it by 4 so that those can cancel, become 1. And 1 times r is r. Bring down your inequality sign, and 9 times 4 is 36. Okay, so 36 is in the middle. Is it open or closed? It's open, because there's no line underneath. It's not including that point. And my arrow should go to the left, because a little tiny dot end, the less than, is facing my variable. Or since my variable's on the left, this is like your arrowhead. It's facing, see how they match like that? Okay, so we solved all of those. Now let's actually try to write inequalities for word problems. It says, Anya earns $8 for each painting she sells. If she wants to earn at least $96, then how many paintings must she sell? Write an inequality statement where P represents the number of paintings she must sell, then solve. So she makes $8 per painting, and then she wants to make at least 96. So whenever you see the word at or no, it's the opposite way you think. So instead of a less than sign, it's actually a greater than or equal to sign. Think of it like this. You have to be at least 16 years to drive, right? So if you had it like this, Okay, that would be smaller numbers. So really, you could be 2 years old and drive a car. That doesn't make any sense. It's like this. You have to be equal to 16 years or older, bigger than, in order to drive a car. I always use that as like my reference. Make it something that you know what to do and that would make sense and logic through it. So I use the same phrase at least and reference something that I know that would make sense. And then I'm like, oh, okay, it's facing this way. And then I use that for this problem. And also kind of think about it. You want this amount to be greater than 96 or equal to it because they want it to be at least that. So they'd prefer it to be more. Okay, now that I have my inequality, if I were to solve it, I would divide both sides by 8 so that those cancel. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times p is p. Bring down your inequality, and 96 divided by 8 is 12. And then if I graph that, okay, it could be equal to 12, but they'd prefer to sell more so that you make more money. Okay, finally, last one. You got this. It says 5 friends are splitting a restaurant bill evenly. The total cost of the meal was 80. So you take the meal, divide it by how many people there are. There's 5 people, and that's going to be, it says the total cost of the meal was $80 with each person also leaving their own tip. Write an inequality statement where M represents how much money each person will pay and then solve. Okay, so this is the money that each person's going to pay. And it's actually a less than or equal to sign because they could pay equal to that amount, but hopefully they leave more. Okay, and it's always in reference to your variable because hopefully they actually leave the waiter some little bit of tip, right? So if you do 80 divided by 5 is 16. Okay, and then I graph that. And at 16, it's a closed circle because you could leave exactly $16, but hopefully you leave more than that so that the waiter actually gets somewhat of a tip. And notice that rule we used where you said that, like, it's like the arrowhead. If you're like, wait, those arrows don't match. Well, that's only if the variable's on the left, right? So if the variable's ever on this side, flip where they are and then flip this inequality sign. And now you can see it still follows the arrowhead match. This matches this. Okay, or the great big open end was facing your variable. And so great big open end is going to the right. Okay. Hopefully you've now gotten a little bit better at writing equations, solving equations, and graphing them. And by equations, of course, I meant inequalities because this is an inequality sign. All right, my little mathematicians, you got this. You're going to do great.